I have an actual live in-person ballerina with us. Her name is Alena. Alena the Ballerina is the corny catchphrase that I just came up with. I hope it gets somewhere. So we have Alena with us. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here, and thank you for inviting me.
Yes. I watched you dance, and I'm just like I'm intrigued by the person behind all those how do you say, delicate moves?
I started ballet when I was 13 years old, which is actually a pretty late age to start. Most people start dancing a lot younger. But when I came across ballet, it was like something clicked, and I knew that, like, oh my gosh, I really want to be a part of this. I really want to study and to be able to do it really well. And yeah, the rest is sort of history. But yeah, that's kind of how it started.
Like as a teenager. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I do know that, like, as a lot of parents have their children jump into ballet really young, and they do little things that aren't really, it doesn't seem significant at the point of time, but then they kind of develop into their craft a little bit more. So that's interesting. I didn't know that you started at 13. Was it a play that you saw? How were you introduced to it?
I had already known about ballet. Like, my parents had taken me to a few ballet performances. I'd probably seen like the Nutcracker and Swan Lake and a few others. So I always knew it was, it was out there, and it was a beautiful dance form that, people somewhere do, but it always felt kind of like something out of reach. Like, you have to get the right training, and so it was kind of at the back of my mind, like something I'd like to do, but it felt like a dream that was out of reach. And then when I was, how old was I? Probably 11 or 12, I got to go to a school for the arts. It was called Claude Watson School for the Arts. It's in Toronto. And there, what I really loved is we got to do so many different art forms. It was drama, dance, visual art, and music, and that was all mixed into our day of regular academics.
Okay, I was going to ask that. So it's an actual school.
It's an actual school that, you do everything you're supposed to do in grade 7, grade 8, whatever grade you're in. But in addition to that, you've got packed in all these arts disciplines. And I think that really opened up my mind to the fact that you can do so many different art forms, and like, there's nothing wrong with trying it, even if you don't have, years and years of experience. And so I started doing some dance there. We actually didn't have ballet. We had modern and jazz.
Okay.
But our modern teacher was actually my homeroom teacher, Miss Cherry. And
shout out to Miss Cherry.
Shout out to Miss Cherry, yeah. I think she really influenced me in the sense that she was always encouraging us to be creative with our movements. So she might give us a phrase and then ask us to finish it on our own. And that was really empowering, I think, because I didn't think, like, I wouldn't have thought that I could have created dance, or that I had any agency to say anything in the language of dance. And so that really started things rolling. And then I actually got bullied in this school. There were some events that were quite difficult for me. And then I saw a magazine cover, like a local small magazine that talked about an audition for this new ballet school, like professional ballet school, that was opening up in Thornhill. And I saw the beautiful pictures, and I told my mom, oh my gosh, I want to go to this audition. And my mom was like, no, I'm not going to take you. I'm like, why? And she's like, well, you're 13 years old. The kids there are training really hard. Like, there's no way they're going to accept you into the school, and I don't want you crying. And at the end of the day, I convinced her. And she said, okay, fine, but only if you promise me not to cry when they tell you no.
Yeah. When they tell you no. Okay?
Yeah. That was her prediction. And I went, and at the audition, she was right. They were like, yeah, 13 is quite an old age. You know, it sounds funny when I say that, but it does is usually considered quite an old age to start.
Ballet.
But they said I had some potential and kind of accepted me to try and see, you know, so they were willing to give me a chance.
Were you naturally flexible though at 13 and just needed a bit of fine tuning for ballet?
No, I definitely needed a lot of work.
Okay.
I was already doing, you know, some dance at my school, Claude Watson School for the Arts. So, you know, I was doing a little bit of stretching and movement with my body, but to get your body ready for classical ballet is just a whole other step. But I think because of that experience I had where I was bullied, my soul was sort of looking for, you know, it wanted to change direction. I feel like that's reflecting on it now, many years later, I feel like I had this internal feeling of like, I need to change direction. And I really wanted to have something to focus on, something that I could pour all my energy into to kind of take me out of that negative experience. And, you know, at the School for the Arts, we were spending a little bit of time in each discipline. Like there was drama and there was visual art and there was music, which I enjoyed all of those.
Like a balance of,
But there wasn't an opportunity to really focus on one and become, you know, really, really professional at one. And then here's this opportunity where it's focused on dance and specifically on ballet. And the model was very similar. So you had your academic school and you had your ballet classes mixed in. So it was kind of the same type of schedule that I was already used to, but now all the arts classes were only ballet focused. And I think that was just, it felt like exactly what I needed in that moment. And I was so excited to just dive in and focus. And I wasn't super intimidated by like the amount of catch up and work that I would need to do. I was just excited to dive in and to just focus on something. Yeah.
And then you got in.
I got in. Yeah.
That's great. So is that the typical progression for somebody who is seeking to, you know, do ballet as a full-time profession? Is that the general progression? Like they have to go to some sort of, you know, school of dance or school of the arts?
Definitely, yes. Ballet training usually takes about 8 years in most like academies.
So they can't just go to like you know, one of those dance classes?
Yeah, I mean,
and do it every week and then become a professional.
Yeah, it's definitely something like you need to be doing it every day, like at least 5 or 6 days a week to really progress through the levels and get adequate training. I've definitely heard of people, you know, training in like after school programs that are very
like a non-traditional
intense.
type way.
Yeah. The typical trajectory is, yes, you want to be accepted around age 8, 9, or 10. You want to be accepted to a professional ballet school.
But you did it at 13.
Yeah. So I think that's definitely not the only way, but it is really important to get in your solid, give or take 8 years of training to really be ready.
Okay, and then is there like a college, university type approach after?
There are some dance programs at universities, but the thing is that mostly once you're around 18, 19, 20, you're already looking for your first company contract.
Okay.
So if you're going the university route, you're sort of taking longer before actually working in the field. I think it makes sense for some people, especially if they started training later and they're looking for still more, more experience and more training, it can work. But I find that university dance programs tend to be focused more on commercial dance. So commercial dance...
you saw my face. I was like, what do you mean?
Yeah. There's lots of different jobs for dancers.
Okay.
When we talk about going to a professional ballet school, usually the expectation is that after you graduate, you're going to join a ballet company, like the National Ballet of Canada, for example. And so that'll be your job. You're going to have a season and you're going to dance with this company as a member. But there's a lot of other opportunities to dance for movie sets, commercials. Just, I mean, the sky's the limit for where
as
people might want to
doing
dance.
Like a show, or like a full performance, like the Nutcracker.
Yeah, and doing regular performances too. So there's a lot of freelance work. That's actually what I'm doing right now. I'm not technically part of a company that has me tied down for the whole season.
Okay.
So I'm I don't always know what I'm doing next month. Sometimes I do, but sometimes it's just kind of different projects come up, or I'll initiate different projects as well.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Alena. Let's take a break, have a cup of tea, and we'll continue our chat. I have a lot of follow-up questions. I have a lot of more of the average Jane questions as well.
For sure. Ask away.
We asked Alena what tea she would prefer today, and she said mint. That's for you. Oh, it smells so good. Probably just smell it. Do you have like a mint plant at your home that you pick the leaves?
I don't, but I should. Maybe I should.
Growing up, we used to do that. Just go, We used to my mommy would just pick from the plant, and then she'll draw the tea, and that's what we would have every day.
That's amazing.
Like the natural, and she'll do it with oranges as well, like the orange peel. You'll have it, and you like dry it, and then you pour water on it, and then you draw it, and then so just the natural way of doing things. Anywho, let's get back in our conversation about ballet. Why ballet? I think you touched on that a little bit, just like you were drawn to it already, was an interest for you. Why ballet as a profession, though?
I think I've always been somebody that wants to express myself. And ballet is such an interesting combination because of course, you've got the musical element where you're dancing to music. And then you also have the visual element in terms of dancers are making shapes and like different formations. So it's beautiful to look at, beautiful to hear. But then there's also the element of acting where you get to play a role a lot of the time.
The drama of it,
Yeah, and I mean, there are some ballets that don't have a storyline, but a lot of them do. And so you've sort of got, music, drama, and kind of visual art in a way as well. And certainly in terms of the costumes and the sets, visual artists are involved there too. So I think that was probably one of the reasons that it called to me the most, because it's just such a cool combination of different art forms.
So there's a lot of, negatives and positives floating around out there about the art form of ballet, and some are myths, some are facts. We don't know. Maybe your journey would testify to what's a myth and what's a fact. Like, what are some positives or negatives that you've experienced?
Yeah, I mean, let's start with the positives.
Yes, let's start with the positives. Okay, go ahead.
I think the positives are, just getting to express yourself, dance to beautiful music, meet incredible people. And I think my favorite part, of course, is performing and also getting to meet people in the audience or see their responses and reactions. So that connection, I feel that, dance is a language, in my opinion, but it doesn't express itself through words. It expresses itself through movement and musicality and acting as well. And so there's something magical about being able to speak to anyone, no matter what culture they're from, what language they speak, I can still speak to them in through ballet.
But is it a painful language is what we want to know. Like, because you're standing, well, you're dancing on, is it called point?
On point, yeah.
On point?
That's right.
Look at me. So you're dancing on point and you do so gracefully. Is it a painful form of expressing yourself?
It certainly can be. I think all the training that we do is meant to reduce that pain. So obviously
reduce it, not eliminate. Okay.
No, not eliminate it. It's, it's very physical. I mean, just like when you think about athletes, you understand that their body is going through physical stress. And I think that's where ballet, sometimes we forget that it's also kind of a sport. It's an art form, but it's got that intensely physical element.
Aspect to it, yeah.
And so I don't think there's a way to completely avoid pain, but it also depends. Like there's different kinds of pain, right? There's muscle soreness, like you worked really hard, you practiced a step like many, many times, and then you're going to feel those muscles the next morning are going to be sore. That's one type of pain. Another type of pain is if you're injured. So that's the one you really want to avoid, of course, because that's actual harm coming to your body. But then there's elements of pain that are just part of training. Unfortunately, of course, there's lots of emotions as well in terms of sometimes you don't get the role that you want or the job that you want. So it can be painful in that way. I think most artists in all disciplines, not just dance, can relate with the pain of rejection and just not everybody always understanding you as an artist. And that can be very painful for sure.
I think when I first met you, I said something. I said, does ballet teach you to just hold all your pain in? And you said something so beautiful. You're like, no, a ballet teaches you to turn your pain into something beautiful or something like that. Yeah.
I wish I could remember exactly what I said.
I wish I recorded it. Okay, so another thing I want to find out about is the environment as toxic as as we've been led to believe that it can be, especially with some of the TV shows. Put in the comments some of the TV shows that you have seen, like the ballet TV shows. I would love to see some of them. I've only seen a couple, and the ones that I've seen, it just looks like it's a very emotionally draining environment. Is that fact or fiction? Can the environment actually be toxic emotionally?
I think the answer to your question is yes, it can certainly be very toxic. The movies and TV shows, I tend not to watch them as much as possible.
No? Okay.
Because I find that I do think that they're based on reality. Like they're taking inspiration from things that are real, but they take it to another level. Like they make it really exaggerated or kind of, just trying to make it more dramatic for the show. But I think the key ideas, some of the problems that they highlight are real, unfortunately. I'd like to say that definitely the environment is unique to wherever you're dancing, like your school or your company or your collective.
Okay, that's a smart answer.
So not every environment is going to be as toxic, but unfortunately there is a lot of toxicity in a lot of dance companies. I find especially the ones that have been running for years and years. I think one of the reasons is that ballet is a very traditional art form. So there's a lot that's been passed down. And I think sometimes people have trouble differentiating between, what is the good traditions that are being passed down and what are maybe not good traditions that we don't need to keep passing them down. Certainly.
But I know, and I want to tread very carefully here because it's such a beautiful art form, and it begs to ask the question, like, do some of the things actually work? Like, I mean, I'm totally against, I'm totally against emotional abuse or verbal abuse or just, anything that will cause trauma to the dancers for sure. But I think some of the strict aspect of it builds the discipline in the dancer.
Yeah, that's an interesting topic too. Definitely a lot of the harsh training in ballet is where some of this toxicity comes from. And certainly if your teacher was really tough on you, when you become a teacher, you might sort of inherit that and treat your students the same way. And I think there's always, personally, I think there's always a better way.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's
what
always
about body image? Is there a lot of negativity towards that still? Like in 2022, are dancers being forced to have a specific, slender type of body still? Is that
ballet companies definitely have a type that they're looking for. I mean, I'd say you have to look at it very holistically in the sense that ballet dancers are athletes. So the things that their job requires them to do requires an intense amount of just strength and proper training. So I think you have to be really healthy to be a ballet dancer.
Healthy is good.
You have to be healthy because you need the energy, you need the mental power, and you need the physical power as well to just even survive a day of rehearsal. So I think a lot of the time people in ballet will confuse, health and strength with how somebody needs to look exactly.
With how skinny someone can get, how much weight they can lose.
Being skinny doesn't make you healthy. You might be skinny and healthy, and you also might be skinny and not healthy. So, a lot of the time people, unfortunately, people at the top, right, teachers and directors are more so looking at your appearance and not looking at the whole picture.
Do they monitor weight, like in schools?
Some places do. I think in North America, most schools are not doing that as much these days.
Okay.
And, weight monitoring is a tool, but I think, to get the overall picture of your health. But when you're only focusing on the weight and not on any of the other things, I think that's a huge problem. And another huge problem that I'd like to highlight is that this is something that has been really, that really bothered me for many years, is that dancers train very intensely physically, and of course it's emotionally taxing as well when you're working that hard and when there's so much competition in the field as well. And while they're getting this support with learning the steps and learning the choreography, there's usually not any support available in terms of mental health or nutrition. If you're lucky, sometimes you might have like a physical therapist on staff, but sometimes not even that. So as soon as you start to run into any problems, whether it's physical like injuries or a health issue or a mental health issue, it can be really hard to find the support.
The resources, yeah. I was watching a few, maybe just one documentary and then a couple of videos just about the mental toll that it has on a lot of dancers. But do you think the passion for dance overrides that a little bit? Like, is that what keeps you in dance, the passion for dance, and not so much, and that causes you to perhaps overlook the emotional aspect of it?
I try not to overlook the emotional aspect. I think that's a huge part. I don't think that you should have to, pay a cost in order to get to do what you want to do.
Yeah.
But I think it's important for everyone, young dancers and professional dancers, to look realistically when they're agreeing to a job or a gig. Understand what you're agreeing to, find out who the people are. If you've had a chance to work with them already and you know the environment is going to be toxic, then maybe that's not worth taking that job for. I think it's a personal decision. But yeah, I try myself to make sure that I'm always creating as positive an environment as I can with the people that are around me. And I'm a lot more selective, like with, every passing year, I'm a lot more selective with who I will work with, what types of projects I will take on, because I don't think you need to go through emotional trauma to create art.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And that's something that viewers and listeners can consider as well. Like when they're making that decision, if dance is something they wish to do full time, and if in particular, if ballet is something that they want to do in particular. I want to talk a little bit about finance, because I know that there's a lot of financial investment in the actual art form, but is the return equal to the amount of financial investment that is put into it?
Depends for who you're asking. Definitely.
Like for an average dancer. Yeah.
An average dancer does not make very much money. It is not, like, you're not very likely to become rich being a dancer. Of course it does happen. It could happen. But yeah, definitely people that choose ballet as a career are choosing it because they love it.
They love it, yeah.
Not because it's going to be like a lucrative, great way to get rich. So it is possible to have a career. I can say that it is possible to have a career and to make a living.
But you have to be like the best of the best. And I mean, I don't know the art form that well, but when I see ballerinas, they look like the best of the best, but technically they're not. So I was looking and I saw that in Canada, actually, like an entry-level ballerina could be earning maybe $29 per hour or something like that, and that's like $45,000 per year. But with that, that's like the best case scenario for someone.
Yeah. That we're talking about somebody having a contract with a ballet company, especially in Toronto. A lot of ballet dancers are freelancers. So you're getting paid per gig, or maybe you have like a short-term contract. And so it can be hard to even predict how much you're going to make in a year. You might have a really good month, and then you might have a month where you don't make much at all. So
it's recommended to have a second job or third.
It's definitely something that a lot of people choose to do. Yes. It is really hard. I've definitely had sometimes 3-4 jobs going at one time, but it is very hard because ballet is so demanding. So you can't spend all night working a shift somewhere and then wake up early in the morning and be expected to do a ballet class and do well in it. It's so intense. You need to be able to get enough sleep, get enough rest. And a lot of the work that artists do as well, and I'm sure you'll relate to this as a musician, is sometimes even when you're not actually practicing, you're still doing that thinking in the back of your head about your role or about the music, the steps, and sort of cultivating what it is that you want to express or how you want to approach a piece. And so you just need that time and space. It's very hard to, like, ballet is a full-time job, whether you're doing it financially full-time or not.
Yeah.
You're doing it
full-time.
Yeah. Yes.
So what are some, I know you're not only a freelance dancer, you have other things going as well. So can you just enlighten us as to other other ways that you use your expertise as a ballerina to, make a financial income?
Yeah, I've been doing teaching for quite some time, and so I love doing teaching because I'm still in the field. I'm still thinking about ballet steps every day, and I get to work with other dancers, and sort of share the craft, share my experience, share my love. So that's another great way to kind of channel your ballet into another profession. I'm also doing choreography more and more, and that's actually one of my passions.
Do you do choreography for your own pieces, or are you consulted by other groups and people?
Both, and I'm hoping to do more of it because choreography is one of my great passions. I love creating dance. And I'm also studying arts management. I'm about to finish my degree, and so one of the ways that I want to combine my arts management degree with my ballet experience is I'm actually hoping to make my own dance company.
Okay.
And yeah, that will sort of combine everything: choreography, performance, and probably a little bit of teaching as well.
Yeah, definitely. That's amazing and very progressive in the way you're thinking about using just everything that you've done so far to, actually make something that everyone can benefit from as well. So would you say, I'm going to ask you this question, Alena, and would you say that this is what you've always wanted to do? If you had an opportunity to choose something else, you had an opportunity to start over and invest your time into something else, would you still choose this art form?
That's a good question. I don't think I would.
No.
I think there's a reason that my life, even though there were moments where I thought I was going to quit or, it wouldn't be possible for me to continue dancing, my life always sort of came back onto this path in one way or another. And I think that there's a reason for that. I think that, this is where I'm supposed to be. So, I don't think that I would change it, but certainly.
Oh, okay. You don't think you would change it? I actually thought you said you don't think you would do it again.
Oh no, I would.
Okay.
I would do it again.
Okay.
I think I will say though that when first starting ballet, my understanding of how it would be and how my career would unfold, was very different to how it actually ended up, which I think, most people in any profession can probably relate to that. Yeah. You have a plan, you have a dream, and then you think, oh, I'm just going to go straight from here to there.
Isn't that life though?
Yeah.
Isn't life just takes
all
you
about
in
the
different
twists and
directions?
turns. Yeah. And, maybe one thing that I would change is if I could do it all over again, I would allow myself to kind of have other hobbies as well, because ballet requires you to be so disciplined.
I was just gonna say that.
Focused.
How are you gonna find the time? You said how many? 5 days per week. Like how many hours per day would you say you invest in like rehearsing? I see all your videos. You're always practicing.
Yeah, when you're getting ready for a show, certainly you're doing class every day, which is an hour and a half, and then you're doing rehearsal, ideally at least another 2 or 3 hours, but it can be more, especially if it's a big show. You could be dancing like 8 hours a day.
Okay.
So yeah, it is very challenging. And
you
also
would find another hobby in between there if you could.
Yeah, I would allow myself to at least explore other interests more and not feel like it's taking away from my career. Like there's so much pressure from the competition and the few, spots available in dance companies, and certainly how competitive the training is. You're always trying to be at the top. And so I always had this fear that if I spent too much time, like, I don't know, reading about something else, or I don't know, focusing on another hobby, that I would be a worse dancer for it. And of course, while I'm not saying, you know, skip class, skip training and do something else, but there's also times when you can just relax and have other experiences and not think about dance, and it can actually help you then come back the next day to the studio and you know, have a new approach or new thoughts to work with.
That's actually some great advice for someone that's considering, you know, investing their time into the art form of dance. Thank you so much, Alena. It's been great chatting with you and so interesting. This is just another side of an art form that I've been really intrigued by. I actually thought I was a ballet dancer, but I wasn't. But I'm not. But it's an art form that I really admire. Yeah, which is why we had you in one of my music videos. Actually,
Yes.
Alena featured in one of them. Love is Free. So thank you so much for spending your time with us today. Where can we find you? Your Instagram handle.
Yes, you can find me. It's at Alena Ballerina. So Alena is Alena and then ballerina. Yeah, you can find me there.
At Alena Ballerina. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone, all the viewers, all the listeners for tuning in. If you have any questions at all about the art of dance and specifically becoming a ballerina, be sure to put it down in the comments. Alena is she's always around, always on social media, so she'll pop by and answer some of your questions as well. And be sure to like and hit the subscribe button as well as the bell notification so you can always be the first to know when we have another session out. Thank you once again for joining Tea Talks with Suanesha. I'll see you next time.